the janitor who refused to stop dreaming. Sometimes the biggest stories in entertainment don't begin on a Hollywood film set or inside a famous recording studio. Sometimes they begin in the quiet hallways of an ordinary school, where few people realize they are passing someone with extraordinary talent. That is exactly why Richard Goodall's journey continues to capture the attention of millions. Long after his unforgettable breakthrough, Richard Goodall is back in the news, reminding people that it's never too late for life to change in ways no one could have imagined. For many viewers, Richard seemed to appear out of nowhere. One moment, he was a humble school custodian known only to students and staff in his hometown. The next, he was standing before a national audience, proving that incredible talent can exist in the most unexpected places. But the real story didn't begin on television. It began years earlier, built on perseverance, quiet determination, and a lifelong love of music. Richard spent much of his career working as a school custodian in Teote, Indiana. His days were filled with ordinary responsibilities, cleaning classrooms, preparing school buildings, and helping create a welcoming environment for students and teachers. It wasn't glamorous work, but those who knew him often described him as dependable, kind, and always willing to brighten someone's day. What many people didn't realize was that music had always been part of his life. Whenever he had the opportunity, Richard would sing, whether it was at community events, local gatherings, or simply while going about his daily routine. Music remained his favorite way of expressing himself. He never viewed singing as a shortcut to fame. Instead, it was something that brought him genuine happiness. Over the years, students and colleagues occasionally recorded short videos of Richard singing. His performances were heartfelt rather than polished, and that sincerity resonated with people. One video, featuring his rendition of Journey's classic hit Don't Stop Believin', began attracting attention online. Viewers were struck not only by the strength of his voice, but by the emotion behind every lyric. The video spread across social media far beyond what anyone expected. Thousands of people shared it, then hundreds of thousands. Before long, millions had watched the school janitor singing with the passion of someone who had never stopped believing in his dream. That unexpected attention opened a door Richard had never imagined would appear. Friends encouraged him to audition for America's Got Talent. At first, the idea seemed almost impossible. The competition had introduced countless gifted performers to the world, and Richard had spent decades living an ordinary life far away from the entertainment industry. But encouragement from family, friends, and even strangers gave him the confidence to take a chance. Walking onto one of the biggest talent show stages in the world was unlike anything he had experienced before. The bright lights, enormous audience, and panel of celebrity judges could intimidate even seasoned performers. Richard wasn't a seasoned performer. He was a man who had spent years cleaning school hallways while quietly holding on to a dream. That contrast immediately caught the audience's attention. Before he even began singing, people sensed they were about to witness something special. Few could have predicted just how unforgettable that moment would become. When Richard Goodall stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, he wasn't dressed like a celebrity, and he wasn't trying to create a dramatic first impression. He introduced himself simply as a school custodian from Indiana, explaining that he had spent years working in the same school while singing whenever he had the chance. His humble personality immediately connected with both the audience and the judges. As the music for Journey's iconic anthem Don't Stop Believin' began to play, the room grew noticeably quieter. It's one of the most recognized songs in rock history, and performing it on a national stage is always a risk. Countless singers have attempted it, but very few managed to make it feel personal. Richard did exactly that. From the very first line, his voice carried a sincerity that couldn't be taught. He wasn't trying to imitate Steve Perry or impress people with flashy vocal tricks. Instead, he sang with genuine emotion, as though every lyric reflected his own life. After spending decades working outside the spotlight, the song's message about holding on to hope suddenly felt deeply personal. The audience responded almost immediately. People who had expected a pleasant performance found themselves witnessing something much more powerful. As the song built toward its unforgettable chorus, applause erupted throughout the theater. By the final notes, many audience members were already on their feet. The judges were equally moved. They praised not only Richard's voice, but also the authenticity behind his performance. In a competition often filled with elaborate productions and carefully crafted stage acts, Richard reminded everyone that sometimes the strongest performances come from simple honesty. Then came the moment that completely changed his life. Judge Heidi Klum, visibly touched by what she had just witnessed, reached forward and pressed the coveted golden buzzer. Within seconds, golden confetti filled the stage as Richard stood in disbelief. Years of quiet dedication had led to a single unforgettable moment. The school custodian who had spent decades encouraging students from behind the scenes had suddenly become one of the competition's biggest stories. For many viewers, the golden buzzer wasn't simply about an exceptional vocal performance. It represented something much larger. Richard's story challenged the idea that dreams have an expiration date. He wasn't a teenager chasing fame. He wasn't someone who had spent years inside the music industry. He was an ordinary working man whose talent had remained largely unseen until one opportunity finally arrived. His audition quickly spread across television broadcasts, news outlets, and social media platforms around the world. Millions watched the performance, and comments poured in from people inspired by his journey. Many said Richard reminded them never to give up on goals they had quietly carried for years. Almost overnight, Richard Goodall became one of the most talked-about contestants of the season. But as every fan of America's Got Talent knows, a memorable audition is only the beginning. The real challenge was still ahead. With expectations higher than ever and millions of people now watching his every performance, Richard faced a question that would define the rest of his journey. Could he prove that his remarkable audition was only the beginning of something even greater? Following his unforgettable golden buzzer moment, Richard Goodall's life changed almost overnight. The quiet routine he had known for years suddenly gave way to interviews, television appearances, and thousands of messages from people across the country. Fans who had never heard his name before were now eager to follow every step of his journey. Back home in Teyote, the excitement was impossible to ignore. Students, teachers, and neighbors celebrated the success of the man they had always known simply as Mr. Goodall. To them, Richard wasn't a celebrity. He was the same friendly custodian who greeted students with a smile each morning and treated everyone with kindness. That local support became one of his greatest strengths. As the competition continued, Richard understood that one incredible audition wouldn't guarantee success. Every new round brought stronger competition, higher expectations, and millions of viewers waiting to see whether he could deliver another memorable performance. Instead of trying to reinvent himself, Richard stayed true to the qualities that had won people over in the first place. He chose songs with meaning. He focused on connecting emotionally with the audience rather than relying on elaborate choreography or flashy stage effects. While other contestants often leaned heavily on spectacle, Richard reminded viewers that a powerful voice and an honest performance could still command an entire stage. That authenticity became his trademark. Each appearance generated new conversations online. Fans praised not only his vocals but also his humility. Even after becoming one of the competition's biggest stories, Richard continued speaking about his former job with pride. He never acted as though being a school custodian was something to hide. Instead, he often expressed gratitude for the years he had spent working with students and educators. Many viewers found that attitude refreshing. In an entertainment industry often focused on fame and image, Richard seemed completely comfortable being himself. He didn't pretend to have lived a glamorous life. He openly acknowledged that his journey had been ordinary until one extraordinary opportunity came along. That honesty made his success feel genuine. His story also inspired countless adults who believed they had missed their chance to pursue a lifelong dream. Social media quickly filled with comments from people saying Richard had encouraged them to return to music, apply for new jobs, or finally take risks they had postponed for years. His influence was extending far beyond the television competition. As the weeks passed, respected musicians and entertainment personalities also began noticing Richard's performances. While opinions naturally varied, as they do in any talent competition, many praised his ability to connect emotionally with audiences. Even those who focus on technical aspects of singing often acknowledged that Richard possessed something impossible to teach: authenticity. Every performance carried the feeling of someone who wasn't simply singing for votes. He was singing because music had always been part of who he was. That sincerity became one of the defining stories of the season. Then came another turning point. As the live rounds intensified, the pressure reached a completely different level. One performance could bring a contestant closer to the championship, or end the dream entirely. Richard knew that the biggest challenge of his life was still waiting just ahead. As the competition entered its final stages, the atmosphere became even more intense. Every remaining contestant had already proven they deserved to be there, and the margin for error was almost non-existent. One unforgettable performance could earn a place in the finale. One disappointing night could end months of hard work. Richard Goodall understood exactly what was at stake. Yet those closest to him noticed something remarkable. While many contestants naturally felt overwhelmed by the pressure, Richard continued approaching each performance with the same quiet attitude that had carried him from the beginning. He focused less on the competition itself and more on telling a story through every song. That approach continued winning people over. Week after week, audiences voted to keep him in the competition. His fan base grew beyond Indiana and spread across the United States. Families watched together, cheering for the school custodian who had become one of the season's biggest surprises. For many viewers, Richard represented something larger than a television contest. He represented perseverance. He proved that extraordinary opportunities can arrive when people least expect them, and that years of dedication are never truly wasted. His journey resonated with teachers, factory workers, nurses, parents, retirees, and countless others who had quietly put their own dreams aside while building ordinary lives. As the finale approached, excitement reached an entirely new level. Entertainment reporters began discussing whether Richard could actually win the entire competition. Some believed younger contestants with more stage experience held the advantage. Others argued that Richard's emotional connection with viewers made him one of the strongest contenders. No matter the predictions, Richard remained remarkably humble. He repeatedly thanked the audience for believing in him and often reminded people that simply reaching the final stages already felt like a dream come true. He spoke with gratitude rather than confidence, refusing to assume that victory was guaranteed. Then the final results arrived. After weeks of performances and millions of votes from viewers across America, Richard Goodall was announced as the winner of America's Got Talent Season 19. For a brief moment, he simply stood in disbelief. Years earlier, he had been cleaning classrooms before students arrived each morning. Now he had won one of the world's most watched. The audience erupted in celebration as confetti filled the theater once again. The judges applauded enthusiastically, recognizing not only an impressive vocalist but someone whose story had inspired millions throughout the season. Back in Te'ot, celebrations broke out almost immediately. Students, teachers, neighbors, and longtime friends watched proudly as one of their own achieved something few had ever imagined possible. Schools organized celebrations, local leaders praised his accomplishment, and social media overflowed with messages congratulating the hometown hero. Richard's victory quickly became national news. Television programs invited him for interviews. News outlets highlighted his remarkable journey from school custodian to America's Got Talent champion. His story became a reminder that talent can emerge from anywhere, and that success is not limited by age or occupation. But winning the competition wasn't the end of Richard Goodall's journey. In many ways, it was only the beginning. With new opportunities appearing almost daily, fans began asking the same question: what would Richard Goodall do next? That question is exactly why, even after confetti settled, Richard Goodall found himself back in the headlines once again. Winning America's Got Talent changed Richard Goodall's life forever, but it didn't change the person behind the success. In the months that followed his victory, fans were eager to see what he would do next. Many reality show winners disappear from the spotlight after the excitement fades, but Richard approached his new opportunities the same way he had approached his entire journey, with humility, gratitude, and a genuine love for music. That is one of the biggest reasons Richard Goodall is back in the news. Rather than chasing celebrity status, he focused on connecting with the people who had supported him from the very beginning. He appeared at public events, performed for enthusiastic audiences, and continued sharing updates with fans who had followed his remarkable journey from the first audition. Each appearance reminded people why they had voted for him. He wasn't trying to become someone different. He remained the same approachable man whose story had inspired millions. His hometown continued celebrating his success as well. Community events welcomed him home, and local residents proudly watched as someone they had known for years became recognized across the country. Former students often shared memories of the custodian who always greeted them with kindness, proving that Richard's character had earned just as much admiration as his voice. As new interviews appeared, Richard spoke honestly about how dramatically life had changed. He admitted that everything had happened faster than he ever imagined. Only months earlier, his days had followed a familiar routine. Now he was traveling, performing, meeting supporters, and exploring opportunities that once seemed impossible. Still, he often reminded audiences that success hadn't erased the lessons he learned before television fame. Hard work still mattered, kindness still mattered, and appreciating every opportunity remained one of his guiding principles. That attitude continued earning him respect from fans of all ages. Many people expected sudden fame to transform Richard into a different person. Instead, they saw someone who remained remarkably grounded despite receiving national attention. His growing popularity also introduced his music to people who had never watched America's Got Talent. Videos of his performances continued attracting millions of views online, while news outlets revisited the incredible story of the Indiana school custodian who proved that dreams don't have an age limit. The continued interest wasn't based solely on nostalgia. People genuinely wanted to know what came next. Would Richard record new music? Would he launch a full touring career? Would he continue performing while staying connected to the community that had supported him for so many years? Although every future opportunity depended on personal decisions and professional plans, one thing had already become clear. Richard Goodall's story was never just about winning a television competition. It was about inspiring people who believed their own opportunities had passed them by. Every interview, every performance, and every headline carried the same powerful message. Never assume your best chapter has already been written. Sometimes life changes in a single moment. Sometimes one decision opens a door that seemed permanently closed. And sometimes the person quietly working behind the scenes becomes the one the entire country is cheering for. That may be the most remarkable part of Richard Goodall's story. His greatest achievement wasn't simply winning a talent competition. It was reminding millions that perseverance, humility, and courage still matter, and that extraordinary dreams can become reality even when they begin in the most ordinary places.